So, welcome back to Third Age Reforged, and the lockdown is here, so my university has indeed shut for the time being. I still have work to do from home, but in all likelihood I'm going to have a little bit more time to devote to the channel now. And ironically enough as well, I'm probably going to be one of the few people that's able to carry on with what is effectively my part-time job completely unhindered, because of course I'm not beholden to anyone to actually pay my wage, and I'm sort of obviously always working from home anyway, so the quarantine doesn't really affect that at all. So it may turn out that actually the pitifully small amount of money that YouTube actually gives me to do this may actually turn out to be one of the safer forms of income over the next month or two. We shall see on that front, but regardless, enough talk about the real world. We shall now get into Middle-earth a little bit here, and this is a map which I believe was introduced as part of one of the map packs that arrived a little while back. Part of the southern or eastern map packs, or at least the ones that sort of involve Umbar, Gondor, Dol Amroth, that sort of area. And this is going to be a settlement which is held by Dol Amroth, so a rather open one, not much in the way of walls, a lot of watchtowers all around the perimeter of the city, but for the most part it is a settlement which is going to rely on more natural choke points to be its defences here. And the outer reaches, including the windmills and the like around the outside of the settlement, have already been taken by the cruel Haradrim and the Umbarim that are marching alongside them today. Speaking of which, we'll get into the army compositions now, starting off with the attackers, starting off with the player who sent me this battle replay, so big thanks to Engsfitz over here, and he's going to be playing as Harad. He's gone for some Southron archers, which, again, if Harad are going to engage in a skirmish fight and win, normally they need to invest an awful lot in a lot of numbers. But of course, in a situation where you're attacking in a siege, you're going to have the advantage with numbers anyway. And a lot of the time your archers can just be used to engage with the enemy. You don't necessarily need them to win any fights, just to hold their attention for a little while. And that's what Harad's archers are very good at, to be fair. You know, they can at least have something doing damage at range, and then as soon as they get closer with their high damage infantry and javelins, that's where the real danger lies. So Southron archers, slightly the stronger of Harad's two basic archers with their wooden armour. And then obviously you have the slightly the weaker, sort of more numerous the Haradrim archers, but they are definitely the weaker of the two. So it'll be interesting to see how they get along in the initial stages. They're facing off against 3 Dol Amroth armies as well, so the cheap AP that is offered by the Southron Warband is a pretty decent idea. Of course, individually they're not that great in terms of their stats, but if you embed them alongside some of Harad's better units, they can definitely pay for themselves quite easily. Speaking of which, we have the upgraded dismounted Serpent Guard, which should be a very good pick, to be honest with you. It's definitely one of the areas where Harad does have a bit of an advantage over Dol Amroth. Dol Amroth's main line infantry is decent for holding the line, but they do struggle a little bit when it comes to dealing damage, and the dismounted Serpent Guard are actually pretty good at that. They may have lower armour and shield values than some of the Western Kingdoms of Men line infantry units do, but in terms of being in actual melee combat, they are superior to something like the Ethelond Man at Arms, especially with the armour upgrade as well, it must be said. Champions of Nafrat are in here, obviously completely unsurprising to see them as well. In a siege situation like this, how strong they are as shock infantry, you can't really pass them up. They're alongside more Serpent Guard, so there's more Southron Warband on both sides, including of course plentiful Trollmen. For the most part, Harad have been made a little bit more diverse in the kind of armies they can bring, but the Trollmen are still probably the most effective to bring in most situations, certainly against factions which pack on the armour a little bit more, like most of the Western Kingdoms of Men and the Dwarves. There really is no reason to not bring stuff like the Trollmen and the Champions of Nafrat in huge numbers like they always have done. So it's not too surprising to see Engsfitz go for them either. Mahout Beast Hunters, basic javelins, again, a good choice because they're not overly expensive and they are capable of dishing out a fair amount of damage. And then at the back we have some pikes, so 2 units of Southron pikemen. They are AP, but of course their stats in melee are really woeful, so you definitely need to rely on their phalanx. Of course, if you send them forward too quickly in the battle, they are going to be mown down by archers because, as with most of the other Haradrim units, at the lower tier, their armour values are not particularly great. Harad's armour values across the whole board, to be honest with you, are not fantastic. Then we have the Steward of Dale, who once again is going to be playing as Harad, gone for a little bit more in the way of Haradrim Spearmen, and he also has gone for the Southron Warband, so again, not too surprising. Cheaper spears, some of which are AP. Useful here, obviously numbers, definitely the sort of thing which the attackers can take advantage of in this sort of situation. Haradrim archers and Southron archers once again are going for a very similar sort of plan here. Hashari is an interesting choice, so they're an assassin class unit. They're going to be made actually more effective when the hotfix is out, but as it stands, like, as long as you can get them into melee, they are going to be good. But you know, the main problem here is going to be their ability to soak up arrow fire is not that high, and in a settlement like this, Dol Amroth are definitely going to try and use that to their advantage. So how Steward of Dale uses the Hashari is going to be quite interesting to see. We have the unupgraded Serpent Guard here, which I think I might actually prefer the unupgraded variant, to be honest with you, in terms of the armour. I think I prefer the colour scheme a little bit more. I also like the fact that some of them have got sort of like chainmail over here, rather than just the fabric. Of course, you know, upgrading them is a no-brainer if you have the money to do so, but even without being upgraded, the same principle applies. You know, they may lack a little bit in terms of the armour and shield value compared to their contemporaries from Dol Amroth, but in terms of their abilities in melee, they are the superior unit. They're also a little bit more expensive, it's worth saying as well, if both units are completely unupgraded. Mahood Beast Hunters are here as well, so again, more javelins. He's gone for the Beast Tamers, which is an interesting choice. Again, they're not, they're different to the Southron Pikemen, but, you know, the Mahoods, you don't see the Beast Tamers an awful lot, to be fair. But again, the same principle applies as with any Phalanx unit, if not more so here, because I think their armour value is actually even lower than the Southron Pikemen, which is saying something. Mahood Berserkers, so going a lot more for the Mahood style units here. Steward of Dale, obviously a nice unit of cheaper shock infantry, which should be fairly decent if they can get into melee without being mown down by arrows again. Trollmen, Mahood Berserkers, and Champions of Nafarat. So again, similar sort of problems with most of his units here, Steward of Dale. I mean, his initial units he won't care too much about if they get shot up by arrows, but most of his army is fairly vulnerable to being attacked from afar. Then we have the first Umbar army played by Froggy, good to see him. We have got a couple of units of a Dunaim Shield Guard. As far as Spearmen go, obviously they are very, very high tier. Spears are probably the kind of unit where I wouldn't be so inclined to spend a whole load of money on them in the way that Froggy has done here. You can put them into shield wall and try and push through, but that's dangerous, especially with a unit so expensive, because they will take losses. But we'll see. Again, they're so, you know, they have got stats high enough that the Spear Malus doesn't affect them overly. And I suppose having a really heavily armoured high tier unit will offset the more numbers focused Haradrim that are just in front of them. Corsair infantry obviously with a little bit of a ranged attack before then becoming makeshift light infantry in melee, which should be fairly decent in this situation. Again, numbers can be one way that you can really wear down the defenders. We have some Naru Sentinels, a really strong unit of pikes, heavily armoured and shielded as well. A couple of units of unupgraded Balakith Shield Bearers. I've never been the biggest fan of the Balakith Shield Bearers. I think their abilities in melee leave a little bit to be desired, especially when you compare them to something which is a similar cost like the Flag Rim. They never seem to perform as well, especially without the armour upgrade. But having said that, against a faction like Dol Amroth, this should be where they're a little bit more effective. We also have the Harbingers of Castamere back here, which of course are a really strong unit of heavy swordsmen. That's one area where you'd expect Dol Amroth to have invested in heavily themselves. Balagai footmen are here as well, so just basic spears to help pad the army out. And then at the back, of course, we have a plentiful array of Alcarondas Legion, which of course as a line infantry unit will be by far the strongest on the field today, regardless of what Dol Amroth bring. In terms of infantry, they're going to have to rely on stuff like heavy swordsmen if they are going to try and equalise that particular fight. The outer farmsteads that have already been taken by this naval invasion, a couple more Umbar armies of Tundra's Fox and Inarius. I think it's going to be fairly similar armies, to be honest with you, albeit with a little bit more focus on quality in the skirmish. Upgraded Balaketh marksmen going to be quite difficult to skirmish with for Dol Amroth, it must be said, if they can get into a decent position. More of them are there. He's also upgraded his Corsair infantry to make them a little bit tankier as well, make them a bit better in the skirmish, and then of course a little bit stronger in melee when it comes to taking up their swords. Lots of Alcarondas Legion, which I think is absolutely the right thing to do against Dol Amroth if you're Umbar. Really try and take advantage of your infantry focus, especially in a siege like this, because it's something Dol Amroth will probably struggle to deal with, even with the amount of money individual armies going to be given here. Shield Bearers this time upgraded, so that should make them a little bit more resilient to Dol Amroth's attacks. A Dunaim Shield Guard there, and some Naru Sentinels. We have some cavalry on the field for Umbar, including some Alcarondas Faithful. I'm not sure whether this map is the best for cavalry sally outs for Dol Amroth, but if they did bring cavalry, something like the Alcarondas Faithful would be pretty good at trying to intercept them. More Legion. We have some Belagair archers as well. Alcarondas Legion. We have a lot of pikes in the form of the Belagair and the Naru Sentinels. More Adunaim Shield Guard. More Legion. More Balaketh marksmen and harbingers. More pikes as well. And up here on the hill, we can see more Balaketh marksmen. It's unlikely they would have tried to retake this hill. There's also actually some more units over there, including some Axe Guard, which is another good pick against the heavily armoured defenders they're going to be facing off against. So yeah, no big surprises here, I would suggest, from these armies. Maybe Froggy's gone for something slightly unorthodox. There's more Adunaim Shield Guard than perhaps I would have expected, but you know, they are a very strong unit. We'll see how well they can do in melee against the Dol Amroth forces they're up against. The first Dol Amroth army, we have Master Blaster, who's got some dismounted knights of the Silver Swan. In terms of stats, actually, they're quite comparable to the Serpent Guard, honestly, only much more expensive and with far fewer of them. Difference being, of course, they have an extra hit point and they inspire the troops around them, so they can make a really, really nice centre to a Dol Amroth army. Just don't expect them to work miracles. One unit that can work miracles are the Haven Guard back there, in conjunction with the Parathor Champions. Fantastic array of heavy swordsmen Dol Amroth have. The Black Swan Renegades, I think, are actually a good pick in this situation. Again, much like the Balakith Shield Bearers, in comparison to some other macemen like the Flagrim, I find them quite underwhelming, to be honest with you, especially for their price, which is very expensive. But against Umbar, then you can justify bringing them. As long as they aren't thrown in against Harad, where they won't be all that efficient, then they should be a decent pick. Similar story with the Halberdiers. Again, Dol Amroth, Umbar do have the pikes which they can use to counteract this, but the Ethelon Halberdiers should be really, really good if they can get their phalanx down, and as long as the Umbar pikes are kept at bay by any Dol Amroth archers that are around. Speaking of which, he does have a catapult back here, does Master Blaster. The rest of his army, I think, is hidden in the trees, perhaps? So a lot of opportunities to hide, maybe? Actually, no, this is the rest of his army over here. So some fully upgraded Ethelon men-at-arms, some basic Dor and Ernil swordsmen to sort of pad the army out, in combination with some upgraded Dor and Ernil pikemen. The other army back down here, Viper Action, he's got some Haven Guard. He's got 2 units of Haven Guard, actually, which is understandable considering the quality discrepancy that's going to be needed if they're going to be successful here. Tarnostian Spearmen in conjunction with Halberdiers, so a nice phalanx there, a shielded unit alongside a phalanx unit. Belfast Marines with the Javelins. Tirathea Marksmen are going to be a very important unit for Dol Amroth here, because they're obviously going to be a unit which is very comfortable in a skirmish fight, and also capable of dishing out a bit of damage as well. More pikes, more Parathor Champions. There is some horsemen here, but albeit it is actually horse archers here in the Parathor Riders. We'll see how well they are used. Black Swan Renegades, more Parathor Champions. So a lot of Master Blaster's army must be hidden, to be fair. Viper Actions is mostly exposed here. Tirathea Marksmen, Tarnostian Spearmen, and some Dor and Ernil pikemen at the front. I would suggest that these positions over here would be absolutely ideal for some Rangers, which are going to be necessary here if Dol Amroth are going to win. Hopefully it doesn't cause my game to crash. And then finally we have Eclipse 2500 of the Dark Cloud. He too has gone for some Haven Guard, unsurprisingly. A couple of units of them. Some dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan, Parathor Champions, very similar looks to all of these armies. To be fair, when you have this much money to play around with, you tend to just try and bring as high quality an army as you can without overly sort of exposing yourself numbers-wise. And for Dol Amroth, that kind of makes their path a little bit more clear, especially in a situation like this where cavalry maybe isn't the best idea. It really does sort of limit your options to going heavy into your heavy swordsmen. And just your higher tier units in general, and trying to go into the red limit a little bit. Tirathea Marksmen, Dor and Ernil archers as well. And of course the Belfast Marines, which javelin-wise should be pretty decent. And then down here, a couple more units as well. Renegades, Parathor Champions, some Halberdiers as well, and that's pretty much it. There will be a few units of cavalry running around, as you would expect considering the amount of money they probably have, stuff like the Haven Knights. But we'll see how this goes. Without further ado, let's begin. So, what do I think is going to happen here? Well, considering the sheer weight of numbers that Dol Amroth are faced with here, and considering the fact that as soon as holes are made in the defence and they start to sort of wash over the settlements, I would place the advantage squarely in favour of the attackers here, as I normally do in a 5v3, but especially in a settlement that has this kind of shape to it. But it is a very nuanced map, this. There are plenty of ways around. I mean, there is actually, by the looks of things, a ford over here, which you can then use to sort of maybe go up around here, this little mountain pathway, which would allow you to completely circumvent this really nasty defensive position over here that Dol Amroth have taken up. Having said that, there is high ground over here for Umbar to use should they want to get their archers into position. But we can see the cavalry sally out has begun. The Parathor Riders from Master Blaster leading the way. Very good horse archers actually for Dol Amroth. They're very, very good at dealing damage. Most horse archers as well tend to be pretty poor when they get put under duress from enemy archers. Not so much the case with the Parathor Riders because they do have better armour. Haven Knights also moving forward. Of course, it's still not ideal. Stuff like Balakith Marksmen will still have the better of Parathor Riders, but it is going to be something for Umbar to consider. Little encampment over here. Not too eager to move in too quickly for the time being. Interestingly enough as well, 35k frames. That's a fairly long battle, but considering the kind of map it is, considering the initial deployment zones, I'm actually maybe a little bit surprised it's not pushing into the 40k region. So I would imagine when the assault really does begin, it will be fairly fast and furious. To be fair as well, I think actually the attackers will probably have more success in the long run over here, purely because it's going to be 3 armies heading over this way. There is a very, very narrow choke point here, to be fair, but we shall see. It's a very complex map, this, which of course does make me a little bit nervous with regards to the old crashing problems on some of the newer maps that have been introduced. We shall see. Haven Knights maybe not too eager to charge into the teeth of this Harad army, because of course if they get stuck, there's a lot of AP, there's a lot of anti-cavalry AP at that as well, so they're not really going to want to do that. And of course Engspit's moving forward. Harad as well, capable of absorbing more casualties, so they're pretty much the ideal screening army. 2 Harad armies then obviously from you with this slightly higher quality Umbar force going to be following them in. Well, the Parathor Riders are now opening up on the initial advance. With the height advantage as well, they are going to be able to get the initial volleys off. Shooting into the Balaketh marksmen and to the Corsair infantry. A Dunaim shield guard moving forward as well, but with their shields and armour they won't be too concerned, even against relatively high quality archers like the Parathor Riders. And so far, Umbar have not responded. They are now, with the Balaketh marksmen, charging over the grassy verge. We have the Haven Knights. This is maybe a little bit ambitious of Master Blaster. I mean, the Haven Knights are so tanky, and to be fair, the Dunaim Shield Guard were a little bit scattered, so a decent charge. You really want to be a little bit careful with doing that with the Haven Guard, though. They're so expensive, and the Dunaim Shield Guard, as far as a spear unit goes, are pretty scary. But, I mean, he's clearly wanting to rattle Tundra's Fox a little bit here. Maybe try and force Tundra's Fox to group up a little bit more to try and meet this charge a little bit more comprehensively. But, of course, in doing that, you provide a much better target overall for the Parathor Riders to try and shoot. Haven Knights thinking about charging it, but then thinking better of it, interestingly enough. Corsair infantry continuing to fire away. And at this point, of course, all of the Umbar archers are getting into position, and this should be where these Dol Amroth riders start to fall away a little bit more. But for the time being, not overly devastating casualties on them, and now they're just going to move back. And I think that's going to continue. They're going to continue to try and pick away at Tundra's Fox's numbers the closer they get to the defensive position there. Eclipse, meanwhile, perched up on these high ground positions. Tirithea marksmen here, as well as the Belfalas Marines. Some more Doran Ernal archers moving in. I mean, there's not an overly huge amount of infantry in here. Maybe worth Harad's time to just try and flood forwards, to be honest with you. I know that they may be slightly concerned about the possible presence of any Nimrodel Rangers. But honestly, I mean, if the Nimrodel Rangers are going to make themselves known in this battle, there's very little I think the attackers can do about that. They're just going to have to try and smash through defensive positions where the Rangers can be used to great effect as quickly as they possibly can. And that will have to be that. Forward they come, though. Interesting as well, Black Swan Renegades forming up the front line. I did say that they're not going to be overly efficient against Harad. To be fair, though, with regards to Eclipse, his whole army needs to be sent over to this side to hold the line, so if he's going to bring Black Swan Renegades, then they need to be used against Harad, really. Fire arrows being used immediately here, so going to try and break this first unit of Southron Warband as quickly as possible, and that's not going to be an overly difficult task. I think the Black Swan Renegades may not be an efficient pick against the Southron Warband, but they're still by far the stronger unit, and the Southron Warband shouldn't last too long in melee. They're going to need some support, certainly. And in comes a unit of Dismounted Serpent Guard. More fire arrows coming in. Still going after the Warband. I think that's probably the best choice in this situation, because the shields are going to be coming into effect against the Tirithea marksmen from the Serpent Guard. So try and go after the softer target first. There are the Wanderers of Nimrodel. So immediately, you can see, when they revealed themselves, all of the attacking archers tried to shoot them down. And even with a bad shot, I would say it's worthwhile to continue to do that. Haven Knights moving in. I'm a little bit concerned about the Wanderers of Nimrodel trying to shoot in. The Trollmen of Harad are here. Honestly, the Trollmen should probably stay there. They might take a couple of losses on the charge, but it's not going to be a brilliant charge from the Haven Knights, this, and they're going to try and charge around and break this force, I would think. Because a lot of fire arrows coming in. This initial probing assault from Harad has not gone too well, you would have to say. Here we go. This is a little bit more like it. In come the Trollman. With the support of some Southron Warband, that's a lot of AP that these Haven Knights are going to have to deal with. They're very tanky, the Haven Knights, but it's not the ideal engagement for them to be in, to be honest with you. Defeat seems certain. Only a military genius could win this battle. Black Swan Renegades. They have taken losses, to be fair, the Black Swan Renegades. Serpent Guard are decent in melee, and they will continue to take losses against the Trollman, but with Wanderers of Nimrodal shooting at point blank. Good thing that I wasn't actually zoomed in at that point. So Eclipse making good use of his ranges there. Umbar are going to move forwards. I mean, Umbar, if they're wise, they should absolutely post up with some archers up on this hill. They'll be able to shoot into Dol Amroth's position and probe it a little bit more. Yeah, we can see that Umbar, they are going to take advantage of that forward. And they are going to go around the cliffside path as well, which is absolutely what you need to do. Like, if you're the attackers, if you have the opportunity to attack down multiple avenues, you need to take it, because the defenders are going to want to try and force a narrower engagement if they can. Because of course they're never really going to have the numbers advantage. Very rarely will they have the numbers advantage anyway. Sometimes maybe Orc defenders against Elven attackers might. But that is very few and far between that you'll see that situation crop up. Some Trollmen have pushed their way through the lines. You can see how much damage they've taken being in melee with all of those Dol Amroth infantrymen, but primarily I would imagine it was the volleys the Wanderers of Nimrodal were able to inflict upon them. The problem the Wanderers of Nimrodal are having here, though, is they're still being pursued by the remnants of that unit. Wanderers of Nimrodal going to shoot in. More extreme damage being done to the Haradrim that are trying to push through here. More fire arrows coming in. As I said, I'm not going to zoom in on this sort of fight because the Rangers will make the game crash pretty quickly. Mahout Beast Hunters are also there with their javelins. They're trying to shoot the Rangers still with their archers, but again, with really low tier archers like this, it's going to be difficult to make that bite. Tirithea Marksman, Belfast Marine. So even with a very limited amount of infantry strength on this front line, with an overwhelming amount of skirmish firepower being brought in by Eclipse here, they've done an awful lot of damage to Harad, and of course, with their lower armor values, it's the sort of thing Harad are not going to enjoy all that much. But of course, the more limited amount of infantry does mean that they're going to be able to be pushed through a little bit quicker. The Trollman still amongst the Wanderers of Nimrodal, with Southron Warband and Dismounted Serpent Guard coming in as well. The Wanderers of Nimrodal actually might be caught out, and this might be a big misplay by Eclipse if he can't save his Rangers, which he should be able to. I mean, oh no, they're broken. I thought they'd be wriggly enough to get away, but that's bad because they did not use all their ammunition, and in this sort of situation, if you're the defenders, the Rangers are such a potent tool that you need to be able to use most of their ammunition at least. And they did a decent amount of damage to Harad in the volleys that they had, but barely enough to pay for themselves, and Rangers are well known for getting kills in excess of 500. I think they'd be lucky, I think, to have broken 150 with those volleys that they did there, which is not what you want to see if you're the defenders in this sort of situation. Dorananil archers now going to be engaged by some Corsair infantry, so again another unit of archers being engaged. They may have the armor upgrade, but they're not the kind of archer which is really designed for a melee fight. Still, the Tirithea Marksmen have... What the Rangers maybe failed to do, the Tirithea Marksmen up here will have racked up quite an impressive kill count for themselves, but there is a lot of dead Haradrim here, but maybe not as much as Dol Amroth would have been hoping for. And maybe trying to be overly greedy over on this front, not committing as much infantry as maybe was needed for Eclipse, is maybe going to bite him as this game goes along. I mean, to be fair, a lot of damage is going to be done throughout this entire corridor by the Tirithea Marksmen as Harad continue to march through, but these are the sort of casualties that Harad can absorb. Umbar also now adding their quality into the mix, stuff like Alcarondas Legion making their presence felt. Haven Knights coming back from Masterclass now after previously trying to do the business over on the other side. They're now going to maybe try and charge in over here. Charging front onto this army, though, is not likely to yield too much in the way of results, I would imagine. They're going to charge in here. I mean, they did manage to charge into the Beast Hunters there, to be fair, but that was a very depleted unit just being used as a bit of a meat shield. Cavalry in this sort of situation, especially melee cavalry that isn't really designed for a charge, is definitely going to have more of a limited utility. Over on the other side, meanwhile, Umbar have got into position. The Balaketh Marksmen trading blows with Dol Amroth across the way. In fact, Dol Amroth not deigning to fire back for the time being. not wanting to get drawn into these skirmish fight games, which is very understandable because it's the sort of thing which Umbar is really going to want to force Dol Amroth into doing. Because if they do that, of course, it's less arrows that their infantry is going to have to try and tank. And Dol Amroth, I think here, I think they are starting to see the situation unfold, and they realise they're not going to be able to hold on to an area this wide, at least not efficiently. So they are going to pull back to the main settlement. I'm going to try and maybe hold this area here. There is also this cliffside path over here which leads directly to this top defence over here. If my voice does start to go croaky, it's not because I've got corona, it's because I'm talking a lot, as is usually the case when I'm doing these. Meanwhile, the continuing assault over here, and I think the attackers can actually afford to be fairly pleased with their efforts over here. What could have been a fairly gnarly situation for them was avoided by simply applying more pressure and taking advantage of the fact that Eclipse didn't have the most infantry on that front line. And now you can see that the armies, they extend all the way back out to over there, so they still have a whole load of manpower. It's still going to be very costly for them moving forwards, of course. Belfast Marines trying to do their thing. What are they doing? Looks like, well, they do have their axes out, to be fair, so maybe they do have no ammo left. They're going to go in over here. Again, quite a narrow choke point, this. Belfast Marines once again going to be utilising their ammunition, trying to do the business. A single unit of Belfast Marines, though. I think Eclipse, he's really been trying to not commit too much to these initial infantry engagements, but if that were me, on sort of opposing this, that would be all the excuse I need to just front load with a whole load of brute force and just try and smash it out of the way. It's a risky game he's playing, to be fair. If it works for him, then it's definitely the right thing to do, but I mean, for it to work, you need to rely essentially on the attackers pulling their punches a little bit, which they haven't so far, I don't think. And this one unit of Belfast Marines, I mean, they're decent in melee, but I mean, there are shield bearers in there, there's more Serpent Guard on the way. I would imagine them not lasting all that long on this front line, if I'm being brutally honest. Ugh. Dismounted Knights to Silver Swan here that are ready. I mean, he does have reinforcements over here, Eclipse. He does have more archers, but it's a better situation now for Harad because they're going to be able to get their own archers into decent position to shoot as well. Still, there are also Trollmen on the front line as well, which is a surefire sign that these Belfast Marines are not going to last too much longer. These Javelins will be racking up a decent kill count for themselves, though. What's happening over on this side? A single unit of Tarnostian Spearmen was left as a rear guard. Not going to last very long, though. The discrepancy in quality between Spearmen is very high between the Tarnostians and the Adunaim. I don't know why they were left behind, to be honest with you. They have plenty of time to save all of their men, really. And every unit is going to count for the defender, so I think a bit of a misplay, actually, that from Viper Action. You need to try and salvage whatever strength you can for the rearmost defensive positions. Alcarondas Faithful, that was a pretty tame charge, to be honest with you, but the morale effects are probably going to be the thing to watch out for. Perithil Riders still over here. Tundra's Fox making use of the cliffside path still, making sure to get good map control here. And there they go, they're going to break. Unsurprising there, just a single unit of basic spears being asked to do something which is far beyond them, really. So far, the attackers can afford to be pretty pleased with their day's work, I think. Good, steady and sure progress across the entire map, and Dol Amroth have inflicted damage, but not to the extent that they would have been hoping for so far. But Dol Amroth still have some very nice defensive positions, let's not forget. It's a very complicated map, this as well. I mean, if you're sort of looking up from on high, as we are now, you could miss like a pathway through to the settlement, or through the settlement I should say, and that could be a devastating lapse in concentration for either side, to be honest. Now though, you can see Master Blaster sending in some reinforcements over here. Javelins coming in from depleted units from Harad, it must be said. Again, I don't really fancy Dol Amroth's chances over here. I mean, it is a decent choke point for them to try and utilise, but they're not really able to make use of their archers, because if they put them up on these sort of raised plateaus, Harad will be able to shoot into them, and as you can see over here, Harad are actually the ones using their ranged units to better effect at this point. Southron archers, maybe not the best archers in the world, but they are going to be able to score some decent hits here, and any kills they can get will be seen as a real bonus here. And now another wave coming forward, another wave of Southron Warband and Harajam Spearmen. More disposable units, yes. Is there a way around here as well? Looks like there is. I mean, it's a fairly long trek to get all the way around, to be fair, but it will give them another potential way around to try and support Tundra's Fox and Inarius on the other side. Again, a very complex settlement this, as I said. Here are the Wanderers of Nimrodelf and Vipraction. Immediately, you can see all of the Harad archers that are able to get line of sight onto them are trying to shoot them down. You can see they're already taking a lot of losses. This is the problem with Rangers. This is their weakness, and it's being exploited here. They're wanting to shoot into this big blob here, understandably, Dol Amroth. But so far, that unit has been butchered. Very good awareness there from the attackers. Easy to see, I suppose, but again, if you see Rangers, you need to try and deal with them, because how strong they are is well known. How much the defenders can rely on them, also very well known. There's another little way around over here. So again, it's just another way up. Another road for the defenders to have to try and cover. The more roads there are, the more difficult it is for the defenders. You can see there's some Corsair infantry starting to move up that cliffside path. There are arrows being flung in both directions at this point though. Balagar archers doing their thing. They're shooting at the Belfalas Marines, I think, which is a decent target because their armour is maybe not as high as some of the other units on display today. They do have a shield, but as javelin men as well, they do represent more of a dangerous unit. What do we got here? Balagar pikemen are fighting something apparently, although I don't know what they're fighting. The shrubbery, perhaps? It is an interesting conundrum this though for Umbar, because there's so many ways for them to try and attack, and Dol Amroth actually have decent defensive setups on all of them. Yeah, you can see Dol Amroth's defense over here though. While they may be doing okay on the other side, like they haven't really lost much of anything on the other side, over here they have lost quite a lot. And again, the savage nature of Harad combined with the more refined qualities of Umbar is a pretty potent combination. And so far, it has worked very nicely. Meanwhile, some cavalry, the Perithal Riders and Haven Knights still trying to do their thing. Harajam Spearmen may be overextending themselves from the more quality units a little bit more. And they do break as a result of that charge from the Horse Archers. There's also the Dismounted Knights to Silver Swan, but there's not enough infantry over here. Nowhere near enough infantry to hold. So what are they going to do here, I wonder? Because, I mean, you know, this is a road that can be taken. Dol Amroth need to organise their defence here. It's like I said, like, as soon as they start to wash over the settlement and all of these new routes become available to them, I don't fancy Dol Amroth's chances in holding down these defensive positions. Not all of them, anyway. Not with the amount of numbers that the attackers are going to be able to bring to the field. More jabbies throwing their ammunition there. Scoring some hits. Southron Warband getting into position, more javelins. Hitting the halberdiers, which is another good target to go after, it must be said. Yeah, Mahu Beast Hunters are there. Let's see here. You can see Umbar now also applying pressure over onto this side, which is the right thing to do because now their rear lines are being engaged. A lot of those reinforcements have sort of, as a knee-jerk reaction, gone off to try and stop that flanking assault, which means now, if Umbar apply just pure brute strength to these front lines, you would back them, to be honest with you, to be able to break through. I mean, these Tirithea marksmen are going to shoot right into the backs of these units over here, which are pretty gnarly, to be honest with you. There is also this hillside assault over here. Corsair infantry and a Dunheim shield guard moving forward, but once again, I would suggest that this very thick phalanx is going to be just fine. But just to let Dol Amroth know that they can't move too many of these units away, otherwise Umbar is ready to pounce. I do like the way the attackers have approached this battle, to be honest with you. To be fair, both of these blobs of infantry at this point are being shot in pretty sensitive locations. Umbar being able to shoot into the side of the Dol Amroth force. Dol Amroth being able to shoot into the rear of the Umbar one. Not a great situation for either army, to be honest with you, but Dol Amroth have less in the way of disposable manpower. Speaking of which, over here, just look at this. Dol Amroth desperately trying to hold on. A lot of these units are lower tier, to be fair. A lot of Corsair infantry, a lot of Mahouds, Beast Hunters as well, so Javelin men in melee. But in terms of sheer numbers, Dol Amroth are surely going to capitulate on this front line sooner rather than later. And there are still reinforcements on the way forward. Southron pikemen, and at this point, the archers don't really have a great shot, if I'm being honest. Not a great shot at all. Let's see. The catapult is trying to pull back, and I think this is what Dol Amroth are going to have to try and look to do now. Pull back to the final stand, because they are compromised here a little bit, I think. None more so than over here. There goes a Dol Amroth general. And that must be over here. Indeed it is. It's Haven Guard and Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan, two of Dol Amroth's most elite infantry units, if not their most elite infantry units. But in terms of sheer numbers, it's maybe not an ideal situation for them to be in. And you can see over here as well, Dismounted Serpent Guard trying to wriggle around the outside. They are going to be engaged by Black Swans. You probably give the advantage to the Black Swans in that particular engagement, but just the shape of the engagement is not something I like here from Dol Amroth. Engsvitz's army has lost half of its number, but it's been for a good cause, most certainly. He's definitely made his presence felt on the battlefield today, and he still has units like Champions of Nafrat that he can commit forward. He still has Javelin men. Steward of Dale's also sent forward the Hashari. Interesting bugs on the Hashari with regards to their scimitars. They sort of have minds of their own. Regardless, they might actually be a pretty good unit to send in against this elite infantry for Dol Amroth because of their high stats, especially alongside all the support they would be getting. And you can see here this position now, not enough manpower, and now Froggy's Umbar force is going to be able to move forwards. Another defence lost. What the defenders have to hope for here is that the attackers simply lose enough of their manpower doing this that they can then win in the final stand. But I haven't really noticed the attackers taking crippling losses thus far. Tundra's Fox still has a lot of his army heading through the trees. Over here though, to be fair, those Dol Amroth archers have really made Inarius' army pay over here, and this has been a genuine victory for Dol Amroth, which they do need more of if they are to win this battle. The problem is they're on a bit of a timer over here, because as soon as Harad win over there, they can sort of come in from behind and start to go about their business. Castamir's Rangers trying to do their thing, but Dol Amroth wise to that. Tundra's Fox actually moving up here in a big way actually, so this was a very good looking phalanx, but once again, as the story of this battle has been so far, when the attackers identify an area they want to push, they do so in numbers, which is one of the main things attackers can do wrong. And that has not been the case in this battle at all. When they've committed in a big way, and Dol Amroth in many cases have struggled to deal with it. And the Alcarondas Legion here with the Adunheim Shield Guard, and they have managed to do a crippling amount of damage to that force. They can go across the bridge here, and of course this is the final stand area over here. I mean, this is it, and they're going to have to defend on two sides. The catapult starting to fire, not a brilliant shot though. Perithil champions fighting on the front line here. Again, they're going to be able to do a decent amount of damage, but the Serpent Guard will give as good as they get. They would lose 1v1 to Perithil champions fairly handily, but the problem is the support, and that has been the issue throughout the battle for Dol Amroth, to be honest with you. The support that the attackers have been able to give to their attacking units has been really on point, and the Hashari using their throwing daggers there, and the Perithil champions doing their best, but it's only a matter of time before they fall by the wayside. Pikemen moving back. Tirathea marksmen there also. More marksmen. Alcarondas Legion and Narun Aru Sentinels falling away. Inarius' army, to be fair, has been the one that has not really made all that much progress, and Dol Amroth could receive an outright victory over here, which is absolutely what they need, because then all of this will be freed up to then do as it pleases. They could find themselves cut off by then though, which is the concern. at this stage. Over here, still Castamir's Rangers. Always a dangerous thing to see Rangers. Tundra's Foxes, pretty much his entire army is over here at this point. He's going to try and cross the wooden bridge, I would imagine. But not just yet. Again, and if I were Tundra's Fox, I wouldn't try and cross this bridge just yet either. I'd wait for my allies to be in a position to attack from the other side as well. And try and spread out the defences as much as possible. Steward of Dale and Froggy there, doing some damage to their own settlement here. They're trying to thread the needle here. Not really. Again, like, it's very difficult for a catapult to thread a needle like that. Now you can see Froggy moving forwards. Good interplay here between Froggy's Umbar army and the two Haradrim players. Goddamn. Been talking a lot the last couple of days, and it's really taking a toll. Ethelond Halberdiers and Tirithea Marksmen. I mean, Dol Amroth are trying to save as much as they can, which is commendable. The balance of power is still reasonably even. And if it comes down to sheer quality, Dol Amroth will fancy their chances with all the Haven Guard and other bits and pieces they still have left. Ooh. Castamir's Rangers. I knew I felt the frames disappear on me. Haradrim Archers on their way over to try and surround. Again, it's not a great unit in melee, to be fair, but it's better than nothing. And finally, Inarius will be able to get through as well. Champions of Nafrat from Enxvitz over here, and of course, in this particular fight between themselves and the Tirithea Marksmen, there's only going to be one winner there. And it's not the men in blue. Tirithea Marksmen being used as a bit of a rear guard at this point, I think, to try and take control of the situation. But Dol Amroth have already done that plenty in this fight, and they've never really been able to gain a handle on the battle so far, I don't think. Froggy's force over here, backed up by some of the Steward of Dale's Mahood units. To be fair, this is a little bit more like it, maybe a little bit more decisive action from Eclipse, coming in with a lot of heavy swordsmen, trying to maybe pick out where the attackers are weakest and try and exploit that. I mean, Corsair Infantry and all of these Mahoods are not going to be a match for all of Dol Amroth's heavy swordsmen. The Haven Guard especially will be dominant in a fight against this. As long as Harad don't get their phalanx down, this is going to be an exceptionally one-sided fight. Even with the phalanx down, to be honest with you, it's not ideal. Mahood Berserkers peeling off. I think actually not fancying their chances going that way anymore. They're just going to send in some cannon fodder to keep their attention. Still some units up here which can be committed, like the Champions of Nafrat and the Serpent Guard, which could be used to good effect if they go around here, to be honest with you. It could be fairly grisly for the defenders once again. So, Ashari leading the way, forcing the Tirithea Marksmen backwards. Exactly what they would want to see, of course. Alcarondas Faithful moving across. So at this point, for the attackers, it's just a matter of trying to mop up what defenders are left and then sort of regather themselves for one final push towards the summit of the settlement. Alcarondas Faithful again, not really the best at this sort of thing. But by the same token, the Tirithea Marksmen are not going to be the most damaging units of the Alcarondas Faithful either, so they can probably get away with it. Trollmen of Harad and Alcarondas Legion will come in easily enough to break what remains of the Marksmen. Dol Amroth over here have also now been taken care of. And over here you can see that actually the attackers are moving across the bridge. The Black Swan Renegades holding the line. And the catapult able to get some good volleys off there. Corsair Infantry actually breaking, and they're going to break through the Black Swan Renegades and get themselves slaughtered for good measure. The Balakith Shield Bearers shaken but still in the fight. But already with the losses they've taken, the Black Swan Renegades are the superior unit as well, so should be an easy enough task for the Renegades to mop them up. Dol Amroth need more breaks like that if they're going to emerge victorious in this battle. And once again you can see that flooding forwards when they see a little opportunity, the attackers, and once again it's left the defending lines looking chaotic and disorganised. And that has been the story of this battle so far, and Dol Amroth have never really looked like getting their ducks in a row, to be brutally honest. They're still in the fight, and they can still use their quality and their defensive position to really good effect, I think. And the attackers have taken losses, but I feel fairly comfortable in my assessment that I think the attackers are going to win this. I just think the togetherness, the movement, the macro has just been better from them. Micro as well, to be fair, because it has been the gaps that have appeared that the attackers have taken advantage of, and the Steward of Dale, all too happy to throw forward his Mahouts, trying to overwhelm these Parathil champions. More manpower that Dol Amroth is losing fairly needlessly, to be honest with you, that they can't afford to. Southron Archers trying to get some good shots off. Froggy moving forward with his Umbar units. They do still have ranged units up here. They have a lot of quality still as well. Depleted Wanderers of Nimrodel. There's still Haven Guard, there's still more Parathil champions, a lot of heavy swordsmen, dismounted knights off the Silver Swan. Over here, Dol Amroth doing slightly better, of course, throwing off that initial probing assault from Tundra's Fox, but there's plenty more where that came from, and the problem is, I mean, they're going to come forward with more quality now, and I just don't think they have the numbers anymore, the defenders, to withstand for long. I mean, this is a little bit more like it as far as the defensive line goes. It maybe should have been what they set up initially, instead of taking yet more needless casualties. Of course, infantry, of course, going to be thrown off. Belfast Marines taking a lot of range fire. More brave men from Dor Amroth getting slain. Still got some halberdiers as well over here, Dol Amroth. Another. What are they doing? Catapult needs to get into position. It needs to be ready to fire, to be honest with you, but again, being in this position does leave it open to those Balaketh marksmen. But they don't really have a choice. They need to maintain the catapult's position over here, otherwise it's not looking good for them. Let's put it that way. Not looking good. Dol Amroth actually going to move forward to engage in the choke point rather than allow Umbar to try and force them into a wider engagement, which, considering the numbers discrepancy between the two sides at this point, is definitely an understandable tactic. Some Tirithea marksmen coming across. They still have ammo. They do have their bows out. Catapult trying to get into a good position to try and sideswipe this force. We'll see how much success they end up having. Belfast Marines throwing their javelins in. For the first time, maybe the attackers feeling a little bit of trepidation. I thought that was Engsvitz's general then, but it's not. It's actually Inarius's. But yeah, trepidation from the attackers, because this is a very strong group of units. Oh boy, those Belfast Marines got bisected by the Demons of the Desert. But to be fair, the Demons of the Desert have also taken a lot of losses themselves, so maybe not their usual devastating selves. Froggy coming forward with more Alcarondas Legion. I mean, they do just need to engage here, I think, the attackers. Get a unit of, I mean, to be fair, even just one volley from the Demons of the Desert would probably be enough to tilt this fight in favour of the attackers, even with all the quality that the defenders have in that small gap. You still have units down here, the attackers? They do, but not that many, to be fair. Southron Pikes as well. I mean, Alcarondas Legion is pretty much the best they can muster at this point. Maybe some champions of Nafrat that haven't been thrown in. Over here, yeah, they do have a unit there. Castamir's Rangers doing their best, but they don't have the best of shots, to be honest with you. They're trying their best, but I can see what the idea is, try and shoot over the houses and into this position over here, but this is where Dol Amroth could maybe make a little bit of a comeback. The quality they have on the front line is very substantial. And they have support from ranged units. Do they have the numbers overall to continue to hold, though? That would be my question. Also, will they get fortunate with these catapult volleys? Yes would be the answer. I mean, fortunate, I guess, doesn't really come into it. That's a very easy shot for them to make. A little bit of friendly fire there, but more than worth it to deal heavy damage to more of the Umbar forces that are putting pressure on this line over here. So, can they make it happen, Dol Amroth? Can they do it? I wonder. There go the Belfast Marines again. Firing in. Really trying to focus down the Demons of the Desert, understandably. One of the most devastating tools that The attackers have at their disposal at this point another phalanx unit coming in the Mahud Beast Tamers. That could be a problem as the battle goes along. Some Southron pikes as well. Slow but sure progress could be the name of the game again for the attackers. But more fire arrows coming in. Depleted Wanderers of Nimrodel, but over a long period of time they could dish out a fair amount of damage. Do these Southron archers still have ammo? They don't. So their utility going to be very limited as the battle goes along. More Alcarondas Legions and Balakith Shield Bearers. There's still some Castamir's Rangers from Froggy down here, to be fair. He might be better off just backing up a little bit and trying to shoot into the Tirathaean Marksman, or just biting the bullet and trying to shoot into this blob, to be honest with you. Because so far, you'd have to say, the defenders have done a very good job at packing their quality in here. Again, kind of the oldest tactic in the book is to save a lot of quality for later on. In this sort of situation where you have so much quality throughout your army, you can sort of get away with it. Meanwhile, more depleted on the front line here. I mean, Dol Amroth can hold on against the remainder of this wave, I would suggest, but after that, when another wave comes crashing in, more Alcarondas Legion, like there's just more reserves coming in. And if they lose this side over here, it could be devastating. I mean, it might honestly be an idea. I would suggest the Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan would be the thing to send in over there. Multiple HP, good at holding the line, let the catapult do most of the heavy lifting. And I think that would be sufficient, to be honest with you. More fire arrows. I have to say, I think overall in this battle, Tirathaean Marksmen probably performed better than the Rangers, which is a rare thing. A rare thing indeed. Harbingers of Castamere from Froggy moving forward, another really high quality unit. And they do need, I think, the attackers have been decisive throughout this entire battle. Now though, the defenders starting to give a little bit back. And as we sort of enter the decisive phases of this battle, do the attackers have enough to overcome the defenders' quality? It's a question that can be asked, because over here I think they are looking a little bit thin on the ground. We got over, yeah, and you can see actually Tundra's Fox, I think, realising this, he's actually going to send reinforcements all the way around, which, blobbing up his whole army on this cliffside path, in hindsight, was a little bit of a strange decision to make. Balakith Marksmen are here. Both units still have ammunition, so they're not going to be committed to melee just yet. Dunam Shield Guard and Alcarondas Legion. I mean, to be fair, Tundra's Fox is the only Umbar army I've seen to have brought the Balakith X Guard. Armour upgraded as well, so good amount of AP that can be sent in. But more is going to be needed over here, because Dol Amroth, they smell blood in the water at this point, I think, because they're committing more to this front line. And even the mighty Harbingers of Castamere and Alcarondas Legion are struggling against the sheer power of Dol Amroth's heavy swordsmen. Umbar might win that fight after all, and the catapult has been moved away. I don't know what Dol Amroth are planning here, but if they allow Tundra's Fox to cross that bridge, then all of their good work will have been for nothing. They need to continue to hold both sides, and the Alcarondas Faithful actually managing to slip through. I would imagine they're probably going to go after the catapult, because there's not really a great deal of targets other than that they can go for. They're going to get themselves slightly caught on the heavy swordsman. In they come to try and deal with the catapult. To be fair, I'm surprised the catapult even left its post over guarding the bridge, to be honest with you. In come the Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan. This probably will be the end of the Alcarondas Faithful, but they can make a real nuisance of themselves, and that's good play from Inarius. He had, of all the attackers, he had the most punishing time in the first phases of the battle, but he's still contributing to his team. There goes Froggy's general. And now, abandoning their post over here for Dol Amroth could prove to be the worst decision they've made. This could be the throw, to be honest with you, because now the Alcarondas Faithful can go in, recharge their heart's content, and I'm really confused as to why Dol Amroth did that. It's an unforgivable mistake, really. Defending 101 is you need to defend every avenue into your position, and that's not what Dol Amroth have done there. They've completely front-loaded over here, and they've neglected this position over here, and they could that decision could mean their destruction, and it would be well deserved, I think, actually, because it's quite naive of them, I think, to have taken the decisions they did just there. If Dol Amroth go on to win, then fair play. But that was a mistake, and nothing will convince me otherwise. Catapult here, trying to do the business. Oh boy. Castamir's Rangers getting some decisive hits there on those Ethelon Halberdiers. But the Catapult also doing the same. Balakath Axe Guard moving in. Alcarondas Legion are there. Some Southron Pikemen still at the back. Yeah, you can see Umbar now. This is a little bit more like the attackers of old in this battle, coming forward with sheer numbers. AP, pikes, solid line infantry, and sheer weight of numbers. There's a lot of quality still from Dol Amroth over here now. They have sort of salvaged that situation there. Enxvitz's general falls. What happened to the cavalry? Did it die? No, it's over here. Still alive, and it's doing the right thing, to be fair, because if they can stop the catapult from firing, I think they win this fight, the attackers. If the catapult continues to get some decisive hits onto the attackers attacking from this side, sort of performing the role of cannon fodder, then it could be pretty devastating. But that could have been the moment where the game turned. I think when Inarius put that cavalry in here, I think the defenders started to panic a little bit. Haven Guard are coming over here, so again they're sending more over here to try and hold on now. Wanderers of Nimrodel getting peppered by the Balakath marksmen. And over here now, to be fair, Dol Amroth have sort of reinforced over here sufficiently. It's a very close fight, this. I do believe the attackers deserve to win this, if I'm being honest. I think the way they've played has been a little bit more together. There goes with the cavalrymen again. And I do think if the defenders go on to win, it will be on the back of their quality more so than how they've played. Which sounds a little harsh, considering when you win a 5v3 as the defenders, you know, you want the credit for doing that, but I do feel as though it has been down to their quality. And I suppose in a 5v3 nowadays it is a little bit easier with the Rangers. And the Rangers, to be fair, haven't been used to fullest effect from either side, which is kind of rare. These Wanderers of Nimrodel, because there are so few of them actually, quite a lot of that ammunition is being lost. This Umbar force continuing to fight hard, but Dol Amroth continuing to surround it. There is Imrahil, or at least one of them. One of the 3 Imrahils that would have been on the field today. There's still the Alcarondas faithful as well. They're going to try and get a rear charge. This catapult though, that has been key. I think if this catapult had been allowed to do what it wanted unmolested, I think Dol Amroth would have won this fight, to be honest with you. That artillery can be so devastating, and even Umbar with a lot of locked morale units would have had a lot of their units start to break in that situation. Defeat seems, well, it's sort of a bit back and forth at this point. There's Harbingers of Castamere on the front line. Southron Archers moving in now. I think it's the Rangers more than anything else. But the thing is, another unit of Alcarondas Legion and another Southron Pike unit. I mean, we've seen in the past a single unit of Pikes be the difference at the end when everyone is sort of very depleted. AP Pikes as well. Not the best in terms of stats by any means, but these 2 units of Castamir's Rangers continuing to poke and prod. Umbar running out of steam a little bit on the front line. I think the time might be now to commit some more units into melee, whether it be the Pikes or the Alcarondas Legion, or both. And it looks like it is going to be both. Yeah, and I think Inarius, considering the fact that he took a bit of a beating earlier on in the fight, he deserves a massive amount of credit for how he uses Alcarondas faithful there. So decisive that could turn out to be. The catapult crew, there's only 2 of them left now. Unable to fire, I think it makes the catapult if you only have 2 left. Umbar continue to fight, and they will continue to give as good as they get. I think Dol Amroth will win on this side. I say that, another unit of Alcarondas Legion, 2 units of Balakath Marksmen. I think through sheer numbers actually Umbar might win on this side as well. It's been a brave last effort from Dol Amroth, because for a lot of this fight Umbar and Harad, the attackers, were comfortably in the lead, I would say. That has become far less so in the latter stages of this fight, but in the end I think the advantages that the attackers were able to build up throughout the fight were just a little bit too insurmountable for Dol Amroth in the end. And I think they are going to lose this settlement ultimately. I wonder what this map is called. It reminds me a little bit of Tol Falas actually, now that I think about it. Quite complex, Lots of different urbanised areas throughout the map. Big. And also a definite feeling of sort of this Dol Amroth Umbar rivalry going on about it. And you can see now that finally this brave defensive position is going to be dealt with. South-run pikemen holding them in place, being the anvil for the hammer. Still some Harbingers of Castamere in here as well. Not many of those Haven Guard left. A lot of Haven Guard for Dol Amroth on the field today, and I'm sure that they racked up a very impressive kill count between them all. Holding on bravely over on this side as well, but again, even if they were to somehow miraculously pull out the victory over here, which they almost certainly won't, they'll have to turn around and deal with the dregs of the attackers from the other side as well. Unless they have some hidden units somewhere that pop out of nowhere, this is going to be the end of their efforts. As we see here, I do love the look of the Haven Guard and the Harbingers of Castamere. Two fantastic looking units. The Haven Guard is the superior mechanically. I do like the gold trim of the Harbingers as well. Alcarondas Legion moving forward. South-run pikes. Just providing that anchor that now Dol Amroth no longer really have. Which is going to be the decisive thing that happens in this battle, I think. Away go the Castamere's Rangers. There goes another Imrahil. This is pretty much all that remains, to be fair, at this point. And again, it's yet more Haven Guard. There's also some dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan on the front line, but simply not enough at this point. And it is going to be an attacker's victory. I think well earned. And again, I feel as though Dol Amroth, if they had constructed their lines a little bit better, prevented that cavalry from running amok in behind their lines, and if they hadn't neglected this side as much as they did, if they'd been a little bit more decisive, they were a little bit back and forth, umming and ahhing a little bit, and in the end, I think that did prove to be a bit of a problem for them in the end. There's one dismounted knight, and so look, dishonour is this man's here. All of his brethren are gone. He's an elite soldier as well, and he's just going to run from the field. He's going to run all the way back to Dor and Ernil and let them know of what transpired here. South-run pikemen are there. Dor and Ernil as well as a map is probably the biggest that I've played on. I mean, Minas Tirith, fair enough, because of how tall it is, but Dor and Ernil as one that sort of covers a whole footprint. That was a map that was so difficult to defend even when the lobby was full, because it was simply so vast you couldn't really cover everything. South-run pikemen and Alcarondas Legion moving forward, surely only a matter of time at this point. I'd love to be able to zoom in on this fight, but of course the Rangers being here makes that an impossibility. Haven Guard doing their best here. And yeah, within 5%. The final Dol Amroth General falls. And it has been a hotly contested battle, to be fair. I think Dol Amroth, small mistakes, I think, added up to this being beyond them. But also, I got to give the attackers credit. They were decisive, and I do think they were good value for the victory, ultimately. If Dol Amroth had have won, like I said, it would have been by leaning very heavily on the quality of their better infantry units like the Haven Guard, Perithil Champions, Black Swans, Dismounted Knights of the Silver Swan, that sort of thing. Whereas in the end, I do think maybe justice was done by having the attackers win this, because I think they just worked in tandem a little bit better. I think they were more decisive throughout the battle. And also bravery. I'm always eager to sort of big up bravery when you're on the attack. Some situations can look very dicey to march into. You know you're going to take losses, but if you do so anyway, with a plan in mind, that nets you a lot of points from me. And a map that I've never seen before as well, with a lore-friendly army setup as well, which is always nice. Haven Guard, though, they don't go down easy, do they? Now, there's still over 1k frames to go, and they're completely surrounded taking ranger fire, and they're unshielded. Well, I'm just wondering whether I can zoom in or not. I mean, the rangers at this point are hiding, so I guess I can. Haven Guard, of course, one of the stronger heavy swordsmen in the game. Pharazim Swordmasters will be the strongest in the upcoming hotfix. Noldorin Blade Masters, Temple Executioners, and then Haven Guard. I would sit them in fourth. Very close to the Temple Executioners, but of course the Executioners have that armour upgrade, which can be fairly key. Those margins can make the real difference at this level. Victory seems certain, only a fool could lose this battle. Slowly but surely, carving their way through what remains of the Haven Guard. It actually still is that. Yeah, it is. There are still Harbingers of Castamere in there, amazingly, from Froggy. 6 of them. They've been through the ringer, certainly. 1 Alcarondas Faithful remains. As if a single unit could be named MVP, it would be Inarius' Alcarondas Faithful in this situation, I think, because of the decisive actions they took. But as a whole, I think it was definitely a united group effort from the attackers here, and ultimately it will be a well-deserved W from them. Engsfitz did send me another one as well, which has the look of a lore-friendly battle about it as well, which will probably be the next one I do. That's the hope, anyway. Sort of trying to blend my university work and now my my YouTube stuff together. In theory, it should be a little bit easier now that I don't have a choice of sort of hanging around the house. But even so, cabin fever. Fever, I should say, not fever. Cabin fever. Hopefully that doesn't set in. But the Haven Guard finally, after a brave last stand, will be put to the sword. 6% the difference in the end.
Victory is ours, but only by a sword's edge.
Indeed it is.
Have been any man's.
Lots of different flashpoints throughout the battle. But again, like I said, definitely throughout the first 2/3 of the fight, the attackers were definitely in the ascendancy. It was only really towards the last stand where Dol Amroth started to make it back a little bit. And they could have done if that cavalry hadn't managed to worm its way through. Maybe they could have made something happen there. But in the end, they didn't. And a relatively even spread across all the kills for the attackers. Froggy was slightly less, but then he was maybe in a little bit more of a supporting role for the more savage Haradrim over on his side. Inarius, in spite of the fact his army took a lot of losses, got a lot of kills. Tundra's Fox, much the same. A lot of kills, of course, for the defenders as well. Siwa did the damage for the Haradrim, champions of Nafrat, considering they were only committed late on and into elite Dol Amroth infantry. That's a pretty good return from the champions of Nafrat, to be honest with you. Rest of the army, decent-ish, considering the kind of situation they were in. Like, they were really just there to be a battering ram and not really there for their skill. But a few units breaking 100, including the Javelin men, and of course the Troll men as well, so not too surprising. 0 kills on the Haradrim Spearmen, so of course rather to be expected there. And then Engsfitz's army, a few getting over 100 as well. Demons of the Desert, despite being focused down, they did still do a lot of damage. To be fair though, most of those 100 kills I think were done to stuff like Belfast Marine, so maybe not necessarily the most high quality targets, but still a good return nonetheless. Champions of Nafrat, much the same as the other unit. You know, they were only committed against elite units late on, and they still got a good return. Southron Archers did decent. They were obviously the ones that perched themselves up on the higher ground and started shooting in to one of Dol Amroth's outer defences, and some Trollmen also getting over 100 kills as well. Other than that, relatively even spread across the lower kill counts, but that's to be expected in this kind of battle. They were never here for high kill counts across their units here, the attackers. They were here for victory, and they utilised their numbers well, the Haradrim. More impressive kill counts, I think, would come from the Umbar armies, especially from Inarius and Tundra's Fox. But of course, that is to be expected with the amount of men that they brought to the field as well. So yeah, big thank you to Engsfitz for sending this one in. Big thank you to everyone who was a part of this. There wasn't anything overly wrong. I mean, I know I did say that the movement up here at the top was kind of unforgivable, and I do still stand by that. I'm not convinced that was the right thing to do at all, because they didn't really get any return from that catapult anyway. They got maybe 1 extra hit in, but you may as well have just kept it where it was, and you would have been able to get that anyway. So yeah, I mean, that would probably be the one black mark, but other than that, everyone played very well. I thought Dol Amroth with their backs against the wall for most of the fight, and they were still able to make it a good, close battle, which is says a lot about the quality of the players on display today, I think. As for what's next, again, I think it'll probably be the other battle that Engsvitz sent to me, which I think is another lore-friendly battle. I have been sent a couple in recent times. Of course, now that I am at home, I should be able to maybe up production a little bit. Hopefully, I don't think I don't think I can do one video a day, to be honest with you. Like, even still, I think that's a bridge too far. But we'll see. I mean, Bannerlord is obviously right round the corner, which I suppose is the silver lining to all of this, that we're sort of stuck in quarantine. Well, we're not in quarantine just yet, but I'm sure that that time will come. And Bannerlord is right round the corner, so at least we'll have some time to dedicate to that at the very least, which obviously comes at the end of March, the 31st. But up until then, of course, it will still just be wall-to-wall Third Age, I think, for the time being, which obviously for the next week or so is absolutely fine by me. So yeah, big thanks to all the players involved. Big thanks to Engsvitz for sending this one in. I hope you enjoyed this, and hope you will join me for whatever is next.